Jeanette Fitzsimons.
Another question?
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister and asks, when he referred yesterday to avoiding overly ambitious climate change targets, did he mean that the minimum target of 25 to 40% below 1990 levels by 2020, which the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says is necessary to keep global warming below 2 degrees, is overly ambitious?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, before I answer the question, could I just take a moment to acknowledge Jeanette Fitzsimons and the fact that she's giving her valedictory speech after 13 years in Parliament, and I know members would want to join with me in congratulating her for such a illustrious and successful career here in Parliament. In answer to the question, that is a global target, and for New Zealand a target of 25 to 40% would be an overly ambitious target in our view.
Jeanette Fitzsimons.
In light of the UN advice that the targets announced so far by all countries are, quote, not enough to forestall the dangerous effects of climate change by mid-century, will he commit to working with other world leaders to raise all countries' targets, including New Zealand's?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the answer to that is that New Zealand is already putting up what is an ambitious target relative to other countries. If one was to go and look at the analysis provided by the New Zealand Treasury, you would see that they would argue very strongly we are doing well more than our fair share. So of course countries over the course of the next 12 months or so as we go into Mexico will be working to see what agreements can be secured, and New Zealand will play its part in those discussions.
Jeanette Fitzsimons.
Now that he's had 2 months to think about my questions last year, which he wasn't able to answer at the time, can he now name even one country that he expects will make bigger than 25 to 40% cuts to their emissions in order to balance our smaller ones?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, look, I'm sure there are some out there. I don't have those particular countries to hand, although they'd almost certainly be in the European Union. But can I just make this point, that the aggregate reduction in 1990s emissions that would be achieved if all developed countries were to meet their currently stated targets would be around about 18%. We know that it's more difficult for New Zealand to achieve its target for all the reasons we know, not the least of them being we've had the fastest per capita population growth of any Annex I country. I think New Zealanders can be proud that we are playing more than our fair share when it comes to the battle on climate change.
Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is one of the ways that the Prime Minister plans to avoid, quote, overly ambitious climate change targets, end quote, to completely ignore the huge opportunities from investment in clean technology? And if not, why was there no mention whatsoever of those opportunities in his speech yesterday?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm sure we'll work on those, but one of the ways we will come to terms with the challenges of climate change is with the Global Alliance. And can I tell the member just how successful that has been? I'm sure he joined with us in the celebrations at Copenhagen as the United States committed to $90 million US going into that fund. We're pleased that so many countries will be coming to New Zealand at the start of this year for those negotiations and discussions, and that will make a real difference when it comes to the world combating climate change.
Jeanette Fitzsimons. Point of order, Charles Chauvel.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I seek leave to table a letter dated Friday 29 January 2010 from Philip Mills, Lloyd Morrison, Sir George Fistonich, Jeff Ross, Rob Fenwick, Sir Stephen Tindall, Rob Fife and Jeremy Moon, urging that the opportunities for New Zealand in clean tech and green tech be seized by this Parliament.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Jeanette Fitzsimons.
How do his plans to mine the conservation estate, expand oil production, mine, burn and export more coal and build more roads align with his stated ambition to do our part for climate change?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, firstly, Mr Speaker, the member will be aware that the largest proportion of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the agricultural sector. So if we're going to make significant inroads into our emissions, then we need to tackle the bit that is causing the biggest problem from New Zealand's perspective. That's why we have the Global Alliance. In terms of building roads, well, If we don't build those roads, we'll get more traffic congestion, and that just means that motorists actually end up emitting even more emissions. And finally, as we all know, when we build roads, a thing called buses travel along them, and that actually helps public transport.
Jeanette Fitzsimons.
It's nice to see such cross-party accord on the building of roads, isn't it? To the Prime Minister, was his lack of ambition in New Zealand's climate change target the reason he refused to meet with the New Zealand youth delegation in Copenhagen despite their letter requesting a meeting?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I don't know where the member gets her information, but actually I did meet with the youth delegation, and funnily enough the youth delegation were absolutely thrilled that I met with them because they said no other leader had bothered to meet with them, and I welcomed the opportunity to talk to people from America and other countries.
Point of order.
Is it a point of order? Point of order.
Point of order. I seek to table a letter on the...
Order. A point of order is being heard. A point of order is being heard. Jeanette Fitzsimons.
I seek leave to table a letter from the New Zealand Youth Delegation written on the 15th of December to Minister Nick Smith asking to meet with the Prime Minister while he is in Copenhagen.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Jeanette Fitzsimons.
Supplementary question. Did the Prime Minister meet with the New Zealand Youth Delegation as requested in that letter, or did he just have a meeting with a few people?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I can't honestly recall the letter, so, but I certainly recall the meeting with members of the youth delegation in Copenhagen.
Question number 6, the Honourable David Cunliffe.